Hmm.
My name is Queen, and I've been on the Discord for like 6 months, a little less than that now.
I'm Peppers. Pronouns are she, her, but I respond to anything that's not true. And I have been here since November of last year, 2023, but I didn't really get active until I think a little earlier, more like January.
Yeah, my pronouns are also she, her, so um, apologies, forgot to mention that.
How dare you? It's not like I forgot to even say my name last time, but it's okay.
Yes, before we start, and I think we're going to make a habit of always saying this, there will be spoilers. Every episode of Autopsy is current, and we have listened to the most recent chapter, and there will be spoilers, and you do not need to use spoiler bars here. So anyone who's not caught up, strongly advised to wait. You can listen back to these later. We always are going to post recordings. We try to get them up as soon as possible, but at least within, 48 hours ish, depending on circumstances. But yes, leave if you don't want spoilers. And I recommend that you never spoil yourself for Malevolent because it's just, for me, it's just that better that way. But I know some people don't care about spoilers. So, all right. So really briefly, we're just gonna sum the chapter that we got, because I know that a lot of people who only get to listen to full parts, they may not know how it's broken up. They may not understand where the voting happens and where chapters are divided. So basically we got chapter 216 this week. It starts off with Arthur in I guess it starts off more with a lounge singer that we're introduced to, performing a lovely song with a gorgeous voice, named Vic Tenetta. I think that's how it was pronounced.
I think so. Vic Tenetta.
And then after being, Arthur's then presented a classic blood and sand cocktail, and then has a little dialogue with the waiter about where he is, what he is, what's going on, which he doesn't get any direct answers to, except for the fact that he is in the waylay, and this is not like the dark world. That's kind of what was implied there. Is kind of that what you got from that, Peppers?
Yeah. He very absolutely definitely said this is not the dark world. Yeah.
And then after pretty much we don't get a whole lot of information other than that. And then Arthur wakes up for the first time that we've heard. And he just kind of screams and then passes back out. And we are treated to him waking up a lot gentler. John is pleased that seems to be improving. He says, it's been 3 days since I was stabbed, so we know that we've just had a time skip. Arthur says that he wants to head back to the windmill. John voices his concern for his health and well-being, since it has only been 3 days and he did just, die.
Arthur is, in fact, a massive idiot, and I love him for it.
Yorick helpfully mentions that there are more clothes in the witch's hovel, and Arthur has been wearing rags for no reason, and it's their fault for not asking. Arthur then has a short conversation with John that is kind of more introspective about how he feels, very scared. He says, if there is no dark world for me when I die, and then they have a back and forth about when or if. And he says, if I die, does that mean there's nothing else? He has a little existential dread moment. He thinks about, I think, confirmation that he asked about John and how his autonomy was when Arthur was dead, if he could move the hands and stuff like that. John confirms that the incident with the mines was different, that Arthur was just unconscious, but he could still move his hand and he had some kind of agency, but John was truly trapped when Arthur was dead. Then they find the breastplate, which we're going to cover in extensive detail in a moment. And then they, with that breastplate, they find, more clothes, a shirt and pants, thank God. And then the chapter sort of closes on Arthur considering Faro, and he gets a little bit choked up thinking about her waiting there for me to see me again. So we close up with them trying to make a decision about how to get out of the witch's hovel.
I will also point out, Queen, as well, that during Arthur's kind of moment of being distressed about not going to the dark world, I do think it's really important that he's thinking about Faro and whether or not he will ever see her again. And that one hit hard. That one kind of fucked me up a little bit.
Yeah. There was a definitely a focus on Furrow, and I want to touch on some of the stuff that happened in the chapter more deeply, but I did first want to give you a platform. I promised when the chapter came out that Peppers could spend a minimum of 2, maximum of 5 minutes talking about armor, because
Yeah,
Peppers is very excited about armor. Peppers, I will start the clock now.
Okay, I wrote it down. I literally wrote everything down. So, y'all need to know, very first thing, I have been studying armor since I was 16 years old. It was my life. It was my, like, little, maybe I do have a little bit of neurodivergence in me because girly pop, it's all I thought about. So, it's all kind of surging back into me 10 years later. So, we're back. We are so back. I did write it down. Okay, very, couple very important things to do. First of all, as an artist, so important to know. I want to know what Arthur's going to look like. So we're going to break this down real fast. There are usually 4 parts when wearing armor. There's 4 layers. There's first the tunic, very thin, just kind of base, make sure no chafing. Then there's the arming doublet. It kind of looks like Link's little green tunic, except the bottom, it has strings, like right at the very base near the hips, and then also usually around the shoulders, or that can also be added to the gambeson. This is designed so that when those strings, you can actually loop them into the holes of the leg armor, which were in fact not designed until a little later into the medieval period. Stay with me here. We're going fast. Then gambeson. It's like layer 3. Gambeson is actually super important. It's a thicker tunic. I'm not even looking at chat. This is like, I need to nail this down right now. It's like a much, much thicker tunic, long strips of cloth that's been sewn together. Almost looks like a quilted tunic. This is designed to be padding. Padding is massively important when you're wearing armor because, yes, armor is designed to deflect the majority of blows that you'll ever get hit with, but kinetic energy actually goes through the armor. Armor does not absorb any of that. Well, where does that go into? That needs to go into these massive amounts of cloth that you're wearing. Arthur, unfortunately, not wearing any of that, so he will be decimated. Moment he gets hit by anything, his bones will shatter in millions of pieces, but he will look pretty fire in his new armor. So, quickest thing I could say.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Is
well,
that?
I'm not done yet.
Okay, go.
I'm not done yet. Okay. So I already went over how this will impact his bones, i.e. very badly. Number 2, super fun designs that's going to happen with his breastplate. The Prince Yorick mentioned that this is all the Prince stuff. Very first thing, he's going to be wearing quote-unquote stately garbs. Very exciting. I've done no research on stately garbs, so I don't really care about that. Yes, I do actually, but that's for like a different time. But the armor, so important. First of all, it's more of an hourglass shaped armor that kind of hugs the waist. This is in order to transfer the majority of that weight into the waist, as your midsection is the best suited to maintain the majority of your body weight. Armor is actually very well engineered. I, in fact, had a little bit of a rant kind of last week going over how amazing armor is and how it's actually very well designed so that you can move around very flexibly in it. Plenty of videos of people doing like somersaults, backflips in them. They're great, but something important to know is that all of the weight will be distributed throughout the body evenly due to its design. Majority of it goes to chest, shoulders, waist, hips. Which is not only done by the armor shape, but the layers underneath, which is that gambeson and the arming doublet, where you thread those strings through the armor. But of course, big dummy Arthur is not wearing any of that, so he's just going to be looking pretty fire in that breastplate. Not a single thing else underneath that except like the thinnest clothing in existence. Now, there's a couple reasons as to why this is. Almost done, I swear. A couple reasons as to why this is done. Because the prince was probably on like a traveling merchant trip or whatever, he didn't have the armor on his person. He was probably wearing more of like a traveler's garb. What I'm assuming is that the prince actually knows how to wear armor, so I'm sure there's a gambeson stuffed in there somewhere. Arthur has no clue about that. I'm sure Yorick doesn't really feel inclined to tell him because nobody's asked about it. And then very last thing, the armor will be embroidered. I'm sorry, not embroidered, but engraved, like all these different prettiness to it, because usually people have higher money or royalty, for example, are going to distinguish themselves in battle so that when the enemy sees them, they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's the prince. We're not going to kill him because we can get so much money from him. That's it. That's the end.
Oh my gosh, the crowd goes wild. Peppers, first of all, I just need you to know that was so impressive. I love hearing people talk about the things they love. You are very clearly an expert in your field, very passionate about this, and I love it. Everyone loved that. People were telling you, don't apologize, don't slow down. I mean, you and I both know we have a recording time limit. Mm-hmm. They loved it. And we are...
Thank you. I am sweating.
There's nothing that stops us from, finishing the recording and staying to hang out afterward. So absolutely no need to, if anyone wants to ask Peppers 1,000 questions, I'm speaking for her. I'm sure she'd love to answer.
Please do. I have, you don't even want to know how many things I have full of information. It kind of felt, all the way back in high school when you did a presentation, and everybody's kind of staring at you and you hope to God that you say all the right things. That kind of like surged right back into me. So I'm kind of shaking a little bit like, oh my God, great. I hope I did.
You did. Everyone loved it. I'm going to back read some of these comments because I did not want to interrupt you. So Fish says, I like to imagine as Arthur is going through the clothing, he's desperately passing up the gambeson, the tunic, the mail, all these layers because John's like, okay, need a shirt and pants. Yeah. Graham, our number one Anastasia fan. I'm not good at saying that last name. I'm going to try really hard to get better at it. Says, let's break Arthur's ribs very enthusiastically. We have...
His ribs will be broken. I'm so sorry. They're shattered.
We have Sunny saying armor impact in the show, please. We have Anuja with this joke that made me laugh, and I was very glad I was muted for it, saying there's a potential, but he has plot armor joke in here, but I genuinely feel like he doesn't, you guys. I think we've proven that the plot armor is not real regarding Arthur being alive at the end of this show. So
he has been stabbed multiple times and died. He has now canonically died.
Yes. All right. That being said, to briefly go over some of our thoughts along the whole chapter. For me, the most, I guess, like the biggest deal to me in this chapter, not only the waylay, which I am fascinated by places that don't have narrowly defined parameters. I love things that are like in-betweens or loosely defined worlds. The Dreamlands was very cool to me, but I am very excited about the possibility of a new realm that we get to learn more about or explore at some point. Maybe. I'm not eager for Arthur to go back there right now. I'm good with that being a mystery. But my favorite part of this chapter was Arthur reflecting on death and what that means, and the way that he admits he's terrified. He just thinks, he hasn't believed in an afterlife in a long time, and that's what he did to cope. For me, I have pretty severe anxiety, and one of the reasons I had to start a medication regimen for it was because I have a lot of existential fear. I get very, very anxious about death and dying and my loved ones dying someday, and the fact that I will someday, and I get really panicked about that to the point where I couldn't sleep. Couldn't really behave in normal society. It was really bad for a while, and luckily I am past that. I have medicine that really helps me now, and I'm doing much better. But hearing Arthur vocalize that struggle and hearing how he was basically saying how it, failing Thoreau in yet another way by not being able to reach her, to by
Hmm.
not going there and getting her. It kind of almost feels like, a second time that he wasn't there for her when he wanted to
Yeah.
be. That was just
I
heartbreaking.
I remember reading, I don't remember if it was, I think it was within the Discord where somebody mentioned how Arthur's kind of main memory of Thoreau is when she sat there waiting for him.
Yeah.
And that's how he failed her. So not only did he fail her when she sat there waiting for him in the bathtub, but now she's there waiting for him. I'm sure that's probably not actually the case because she probably has a life/death. Who knows? But yeah, that's how he views her, as somebody who's waiting for him, and him still seeing her as his kind of selfish failure, and his failure of being a father and being attentive to her.
Yeah, one of the things that gets me choked up the most in any media, in reality, is a child being confused, lost, alone. Kind of
Hmm.
the same vibes of like when an innocent person, a child, an animal doesn't understand why they're being left behind, or nobody's coming to help them, and things like that. That really gets to my heart. I have a really hard time with it, and the fact that that is part of Arthur's journey personally really makes him feel like a real character to me, because those are not things you just get over. Those are things you
Yeah.
carry with you always. This is not a traditional like sitcom where tidy up the plot line in 30 minutes or less and go. And a lot of these recurring problems, that's how people are. You get better at coping, you get better at dealing with it, you get better at moving on and processing, but things like that never truly go away. Sorry, someone scared me.
No, I get that. I'm very much I keep reflecting back to with Arthur kind of earlier in I think it was either season 3 or season 4, where Arthur was certain that nobody was waiting for him.
Yeah.
And yet now he's now struck with the reality of him actually dying. And then suddenly he's forced to kind of review that thought process, and you already see how that switched. That has now switched. Now that he's died, he's now thinking of Thoreau. He's now thinking of how he can be there for her, even though he insists that nobody's waiting for him. That was kind of an interesting kind of flip that felt very natural. The moment that you're actually in it and you experience it, oh, you
Yeah.
sing a different tune.
Yeah, definitely. I think Malevolent's themes of grief and choice and everything have really resonated with a lot of people as being very authentic in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is hard to touch on in a lot of media.
I think Nikki also brings up a good point in chat where Nikki says, I think that switch started in the Dreamlands with Kane's lure. Yeah, I
Yes.
agree. And
Yeah.
then I think it was even solidified further in Intermezzo, where Kane's basically, I mean, I keep thinking of Sam Glyph's beautiful art of Kane holding Thoreau.
That's my favorite.
It fucks me up so much. Him holding her, and now Thoreau's like a tangible thing for Arthur to accept. I still don't think, and this is kind of jumping all the way back to Intermezzo. I don't think Arthur believes that Kane will maintain his promise to bring him Thoreau, which is why he never says, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna go get the Black Stone and we're gonna get what he promises." I don't think Arthur's that naive. I think instead he knows that Kane will fulfill his threats. I don't think he will fulfill his promises, but he still is now considering, because Thoreau is now a tangible thing, a tangible goal. It's more of him not being able to touch her until he's in the dark world. And now that he died, he didn't even have that. So that kind of fucks me up a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that it was very pointed. To me, I never bought that Kane was going to, make anything right for anybody. I don't think he's in the business of being a boon to anybody, but I do think that he's very serious about his threats. I think that overall they are always going to be more motivated by the stick than the carrot. I don't even think Kane needed a carrot, but I think he sort of knew that it would be a temptation regardless. Because I think even if you know that it's not possible, the fact that somebody dangles it in front of you and you know that they could do it drives, that would drive me crazy. That's absolutely a psychological, that's a seed that they wanted to be planted. If anyone has not seen that glyph art we were talking about, there it is.
Yes.
I don't have it bookmarked. I don't know what you're talking about. But yes, I think that's wonderful. And, to switch to a different part of chapter 216, one of my more lighthearted favorite parts was Yorick. I don't know if I'm ever going to get sick of Yorick. I know that some people, I'm sure, and everyone has their opinions, and that's fine. But Yorick is one of the best things to happen to Malevolent, because I was dying for more moments of comedy in this podcast, but I also could not think of how they would be so expertly interwoven without ruining the tension or the like depth of the conversations they have. And Yorick does it just perfectly for me. I mean, the chiming in, he's so polite too. He says please, he says thank you. Like I don't know. I'm a little bit of a Yorick stan. I think he's wonderful. But that was one of my favorite parts. It's like, you didn't ask. Like, how am I supposed to tell you things that you don't ask about? But I just think that's funny.
I feel almost like he's like the younger brother to this team, where he feels very much like a younger, less sinister version of John in, season 1. What's a wheelchair?
Yeah.
Where versus, this Yorick, yeah, he's all knowing, but he has no clue how to actually use his knowledge, and it results in some really funny moments. I also think that Yorick is a great balance for Arthur and John, who they get introspective, but sometimes they almost weigh each other down. And so Yorick's a great person to kind of break that tension where, they're really mulling over the dark world. And then Yorick immediately chimes in and they're like, oh, okay, let's stop. Sad. And now Yorick is going to offer us information that we've needed to know for the past 3 days, but he's decided now's a good time to offer him, a wardrobe, some breastplate, Well, speaking of, I will, sorry to cut in just a little bit. I did see people mention in chat how much they liked John and Arthur in this episode. I will not lie. When I first listened to this episode, I was driving in the car on my way back to the car rental place. I did scream in my car very, very loud, to the point that my throat got a little raw.
Oh my God.
And I kind of had to whisper to the person who I gave my car back to when it came to John kind of comforting Arthur, that moment of that scream, that delivery. Oh my gosh, incredible delivery of kind of the raw pain of Arthur being stabbed, 6 times, and also gutted, literally gutted. Maggots being put in there and then scooped out with probably the grossest little hag hands you've ever seen in your life. So I found that very, definitely as a wump connoisseur, that was delicious, remarkable.
For those among us who may not know, what is wump?
Oh, okay. So wump is, so for those of you who know about hurt and comfort, wump is essentially the hurt part of it. It is all of the pain. It is all of that kind of juicy, cathartic pain that a character goes through. It is usually accompanied by comfort afterwards. And I'm sure that was the 3 days of Arthur absolutely, definitely just sitting there and not doing anything, because he's a smart guy who decides to,
Yeah, I will point out, so the chat, I want to make sure I'm mentioning you guys because I do see what you're saying, but you're all being so silly, which is wonderful, and I love that. Fish says, you can tell Yorick is not doing this maliciously, it's just how he operates, which I think is one of the best things, because I think a lot of us can relate to, especially us neurodivergent friends, can relate to just offering information and not really understanding sometimes why it may not be the appropriate time, or why your tone is off a little bit, or not realizing when maybe that could have waited a couple seconds. I think Yorick does it in such a charming way, and for me, it's one of the things that back when Arthur and John were having what I think was my favorite moment in Malevolent ever, which was, do you think I couldn't punch someone if I couldn't just see again? It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite parts. I love it. I could probably memorize it if I said it a few more times out loud because it's just my favorite. So that kind of comedy was right in my wheelhouse, and I'm so happy that they have this like little guy who can do that now. I love that. It's great. I have this thing of like, I'm so sorry. I'm getting distracted because Abriel posted screenshots and I can't read them while also talking. But she very helpfully posted what Arthur has said since Intermezzo about Kane's promise / threat to them. Those are very cool. You should take a look at them in the chat. They are slightly upwards.
Just scroll up a little bit.
Yes.
And if y'all are listening to this a little later, scroll up a lot of it.
Yeah. Scroll up to, for me, in Pacific time zone, which is the best time zone, 6:28 p.m. She
You're
posted
lying.
it. I don't know. I think Pacific time zone is kind of the best. Okay. So, wait, let me look back at I have notes. I have a very organized little Google Doc.
And then I keep like kind of yoinking you out of it. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad that not everybody is as straight-laced as I am. It would be way boring. It would just be a scripted thing if it were just me. So I loved that the end of at the end of Malevolent's chapters always have to contain a choice, and I can tell that would be something that's very hard to organically work into the story, especially if you're trying to sew those chapters together to make a part. And I think as Malevolent's gone on, he's just gotten better and better at making it sound natural that there's a choice to be made and they're going to make it. And I really liked the way that this one kind of flew out. Anyway, going to move on to the vote, which is like my favorite part ever. For those of you who can see the screen, it's not super important that you do not worry if you are just listening to this, but I do make poll graphics every week when we do polls, and I give little updates using this graphic. I primarily did it because I wanted to draw attention to the vote and have people be able to just glance at their phone or glance at their Discord and see really quickly what the stats were instead of having to scroll around and find the text. So this was just kind of a different way to organize the votes. But I have a screenshot of the current poll right now. This is as of a while ago, so like 3 hours ago. So this is not accurate right this second. But...
a while ago, meaning 3 hours ago, which is just such a long time away, a whole 3 hours.
Well,
We're talking like Arthur's sense of time of, I've been sitting for 3 hours, I'm going to have an aneurysm and die.
Well, listen, okay, well, first of all, what?
I will just say, I was going to say a compliment, but with that tone of voice, maybe I'll pull it back.
No, I was just going to say, first of all, this man really thinks that 3 days is enough to get over 6 stab wounds, on top of the fact that, like, the day before he wasn't resting. John straight up says, oh, you were, you were on the move all day, like the whole time you were up, you were moving. And so I have to just say, Arthur did not rest for 3 days. This is not a Jesus situation where he was dead and rose after 3 days. This is the man woke up screaming day 1, probably rested. I'm gonna assume he rested. I'm thinking day 2, he was probably half in, half out. And then yesterday, he would not stop moving. Anyway.
Yeah. He did mention, I'm so sorry, I keep pausing for the poll just for a moment, but I do want to mention with that as well, with the 3 days sleeping, because, I'm a little sucker for it. I do find it really interesting how, like, restless he was, because it is basically heavily implied in this chapter that, so restless to the point that he's kind of searching around for an exit. And I played it around with a couple members where we were chatting about, why that was. And I thought it was really interesting, kind of this combination of, I would imagine, well, he is underground. He is kind of in tunnels. I imagine that the longer he's there, the larger kind of sense of claustrophobia he's starting to feel. I also think he doesn't want to think about the fact that he can't remember the Dark World, or even if he went to it and he never saw Faro. I'm sure that as well. And then I imagine number two, kind of that level of anxiety that number one, my brother just got. Like, he was dead. Straight up, like, that girly pop was putting stuff in him. He was so dead. And I kind of wonder kind of his sense of
Stuff
safety
in that man like a build-a-bear.
Yeah, literally putting one of those little heart like voice box in it, except it's a
God.
squirming thing of maggots that'll like chat to him occasionally. I wonder if one's stuck in there. And then just that general sense of, oh, I got, you know, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
So I'm sure he was feeling very well adjusted as he was sitting in his murderer's bed, and he was very excited to just stay there and sleep. Anyway, back to the polls.
Scotty says it was so visceral. Yeah, I think people had a very strong visceral reaction to the hag's desecration of a corpse. That really struck a lot of people. It did not personally affect me, but I know that quite a significant number of people said this episode felt darker than any other, not just because of Arthur's death, but the disrespect that was done to his corpse. It really was like salt in the wound to an extreme degree. So there are a lot of people who have very strong emotional reactions to that episode because of just how gruesome it is, which is totally fair and understandable and normal, and it's good. It shows you're human.
It's good.
And even if you didn't have that strong visceral reaction like I didn't, that's okay too. It just means that you're able to like step back enough from fiction that it doesn't bother you, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. I just wanted to let everyone know out there your reaction is valid. Yeah, anyway. Scotty says everything hits everyone differently. Bill says the hag messing with Arthur's corpse kind of made it more real that, oh no, Arthur is gone. Kind of a punch in the stomach. Yeah.
Yeah. And Anuja mentions how there was so little dignity to it. Yeah, that's how I felt. It was such, like, you would imagine, especially in, you know, there's certain TV shows that I watch where it has such a great respect for kind of the main character, that even though he dies, it not necessarily that the villains have any respect for him, but it's almost like the writers themselves, you can sense that they just don't want to like ruin the body. They want to keep it, you know, nice and clean and respected. And the fact that he was just torn open. I know, Queen, you knew that I was having a tough time in it because I literally messaged you and I was like, hey, do you want to talk for 6 full hours?
Yeah, Peppers and I had a great 6-hour voice call about it. It was very eye-opening for me because I did not have as emotional a reaction as everyone else did. I think part of that is just my reaction to a community in grief. My reaction tends to be a little bit more stable, to support the people who need it and put my feelings on the back burner, which isn't always healthy, but I do think some degree of that is pretty natural. There are always going to be people who are going to be more stable. They want to be the shoulder that people can cry on, and there's nothing wrong with having a weak moment. And I know that part of the lovely thing about this community is that I really feel that if I'm having a hard time, people are going to be here to support me when I need it. And it was not an issue for me to support people when they were going through it. So it's a total reciprocity thing. Back to the vote.
Yeah.
So I just checked and none of the percentages have changed. We did gain a few more votes, but the percentages have stayed the same. So this is pretty much accurate. So we have head back to the windmill or try again in the hallways. Peppers, how are you voting right now?
I see at the moment, I'm not feeling terribly strongly about it. Like, if you pointed a gun to me, I'd be like, well, I don't know. But at the moment, I am selecting that he keep going through the tunnels and not return back to the windmill. Only because, I'm very used to more of a forward-driven plot. This kind of feels like he's taken a step back. But actually, Queen, you and I touched on this literally 10 minutes before we started the podcast, where we were talking about this could potentially be, for those of you who have played D&D or any other tabletop RPG, this might also be the DM hinting, hey, maybe you missed some loot back there. And that kind of hit me today, where I was like, I wonder if we're forgetting something. And then very last thing, actually, I saw Anuja mention this in the poll discussion a couple days ago, where kind of returning back to the windmill is definitely more Arthur's decision, what Arthur wants to do, and noticing that the less we do what Arthur wants to do, the more reckless he becomes in the future. Hadn't thought about that, but that was a good point, Anusha. Let me know if I'm completely butchering your point or got it correct. Let me know.
That literally might be enough to sway me, because we hopped on the phone to listen to the chapter together one last time before the podcast started. I just noticed I had this feeling. So this whole time I've been Team Hallways, because I just feel like it's insane if you think about the fact that they went into these tunnels, they had this amazing climactic moment, all this character development happened, this amazing stuff happened, and then they're just going to turn around and go back the way they came. Like, that seems so backwards to me. That doesn't feel narratively satisfying to me. That doesn't feel exciting to me. I already know what that place looks like. I don't want Arthur climbing, and it's kind of guaranteed that he'll have to climb something, even if he does find a rope or boxes or whatever. He's going to have to do some climbing, and I don't care what Arthur says. I don't trust that man with his own body, and I don't think he's going to be capable of doing that without incurring a, insert meme here, major injury. So I don't think that that's a good idea. That's been my stance pretty much this whole time. However,
and I love how suspicious that little thinking emoji Joe just put in.
Yeah, so Joe has been listening, which I'm very happy about.
For those of you who don't know, Joe Guthrie, I just said Guthrie. Joe Guthrie is Harlan's wife. And I do think it is so massively important to note that Joe has an enormous stake in the creation of Malevolent as well. You know, she helps with the preliminary kind of creation of it. She's there constantly with us in the mines. She's awesome. She's great. But then she says suspicious stuff like that, and it scares me. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, Joe and Harlan jump scares are frequent in the Discord. And I will say I never feel limited. I never feel like suffocated by their presence, and I don't feel like they're constantly, you know, as many jokes as I make, I don't feel constantly watched. I think they're just pretty cool people that sometimes hang out and then sometimes know exactly what they're doing by posting silly memes. Easy emojis. And I don't mean to always make them feel scrutinized for everything they say and do, because I think that can be uncomfortable too. But you know, I enjoy them being here, and it's very nice that they are so supportive of a fan project. We're allowed to use their Discord to do this, and they're being very sweet and really supporting fans having their own voice and having their own opinions, and not coming in to correct them all the time, and not, you know, having a worse attitude. I've seen some creators out there who don't really know what to do with their fandom. So thank you, Joe and Harlan, for being so supportive of all the fan projects and the fact that we're getting to do this. So that being said, I'm going to just really briefly go over the fact that I do see Joe just asked me a question, and I will get to that, but I don't want to lose my train of thought. The reason I was starting to lean toward Windmill before we jumped on this call is because how many times have I gone against what Arthur wants? And that doesn't usually impact my vote, but I just felt like how many times he was like, windmill, we're going to the windmill. He's very no nonsense about it. Honestly, like, now that I'm thinking about it, he sounds exactly like me. He sounds like, no, I'm not taking no for an answer. This is what I've decided to do, and I want to do it. And I'm tired of being in here. I think he's really sick and tired of being in those tunnels, and I don't blame him. I think that he has a point that, you know, they'll figure it out. They've always figured it out. It's kind of one of those, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it things. I think that he's eager to get out of a bad situation, and he doesn't really care about any of the things I care about, because I'm not Arthur. I'm not in his situation. What I care about is like, ooh, I wonder what the rest of the tunnels look like. I wonder where the story's going to go if he goes through all of the tunnels, and, you know, what is Yorick so confident for? I have all these questions. Arthur's not thinking about any of that. He just wants to be out of these damn tunnels, and he doesn't care that they've already been to the windmill. He's happy to go back there, because at least there is not here. So I don't know.
And it's a guaranteed way out as well.
Yeah, Yorick knows where that is. There is no question about whether or not he knows how to get there. Now, as the disclaimer I always put up when I'm talking about this, no, it's not guaranteed that we'll actually get to the windmill. No, it's not guaranteed that, when we get there, something won't have changed. But in order to vote, I firmly believe you have to, like, believe in the intention of the vote. So if you set out to go to the ice cream shop and you start walking there, you don't think I could get distracted and go to visit a friend first. You think, I'm going to the ice cream shop. The possibility of doing anything else doesn't occur to you. So we should really just assume that, like, yes, we're going to the windmill. So I don't know. I'm starting to feel like I could flip on this one right now, which is dangerous to say on a live call.
Just so that I can shake your confidence even more.
Great, thanks.
What you say that you like this?
I do.
You
like
these arguments.
I do.
So I'm just helping you out. So a couple things. Anusha made another good point where it has been 3 days of tunnels, of hallways. I mean, we can do more if y'all want, or we can go back up. But I will, however, argue for keeping to go through the tunnels, because I am more of the opposite, where I'm really probably the worst voter when it comes to a horror podcast, because I'm like, no, not my Blorbo getting hurt in this horror podcast. How could that happen? There's a part of me that's like, okay, well, he also has 3-day-old stitches. Maybe it's not the best idea to demand that he exert himself even more to go up a windmill that doesn't necessarily have any guarantee to go back, since, I mean, we were there 3 days ago and he was in much better shape, and then he, got a massive splinter in his hand. So how much of a risk is that going to result in? So you never know. Is this a guarantee that they will, quote unquote, get out of the tunnels by returning to the windmill? But there's might also be a guarantee that they could find an exit through the hallway, that, quote unquote, York is confident in it. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah,
there's so many different reasons.
Sunny says, bro spent 3 months in the prison pits. He can manage 1 more day to heal and not do stupid stuff. Yeah, the problem here for me is that John's fussing over Arthur. Some people have said he's being a little fragile, and for obvious reasons, and he has every right to be, and Arthur can handle it. I feel so tentative in saying that Arthur can just handle anything when he, first of all, just died. And second of all...
He did just die.
And second of all, like, the fact that, I think that... So, I did a compilation of Booth John talking to the voters. Long story, but if you don't know, Booth John is an entity that gives the voters pretty much their opening and closing, and it gets cut from the show. It doesn't get uploaded to any of the places where the public can see it. So Booth John is exclusively for patrons. And when I've been listening to Booth John, there were so many times in the first season that he was really hammering at home that, this is not a game. This is a life you're playing with. You can't just treat Arthur like a doll to, like, pose and put around where you want him to. And that didn't... First, I really thought that was just a very good way of taking it seriously. But the longer I hang out with this sad, wet British man, the more I really feel like protective of his safety and protective of his well-being in a way that even Arthur is not. And I have to either divorce myself from that enough to make a choice, or lean really hard into it and make my choice based on that protectiveness. Just depends on the situation for me. But that being said, it does really suck. Like, if I pick Windmill in the end, it does really suck that his day of searching, at least at minimum a day, at maximum 2 days. I do not think all 3 days were spent searching. I think that first day, like I said, was him being half in, half out. John does confirm that the day prior to this, he had been on the move constantly, and he barely rested. Arthur has already pushed himself, and am I willing to have him give up another like, all of that effort and all of that time he spent searching? Do we give up now? And is it going to be classified as giving up? Is that this option? Because like, you could technically see this as give up and go home, or keep persisting. And in Malevolent, I think it's pretty obvious that the choice would always be to keep persisting. But I don't know if that's how this vote is being categorized, so it's a little tricky. I don't know. So this very good poll for me. I can see both sides really easily.
I have a feeling, Marvin, I haven't even glanced at the poll discussion, but I just have like a little feeling that Marvin may be begging for a tie.
Yeah, Marvin's always begging for a tie. I can't imagine what would happen if we get a tie, but I'm not even going to give credence to that. I'm not going to give that a platform. We don't platform ties here. No ties. Fish says, I will flip if I can be guaranteed hag treasure. Some people have goals that are nothing like the popular vote, or that have nothing to do with the storyline or anything. Like Fish is just really in it for treasure, wants to see what trinkets he can find. He has his own agenda.
And to be fair, are there going to be perhaps windmill trinkets that we missed? Because the DM is like, hey besties, this like intricate design that I made, I'm really pissed that you guys missed it. So here's a little like hint, here's a little shortcut to return back to it. Is that happening?
I mean, there's so many possibilities on both sides. So even though the poll looks really obvious right now, I think it can truly go any way. I think it depends on how you talk and what you say and how many people you convince right now. I could see it easily flipping a couple times before it settles. Do you think, Joe says, do you guys think Harlan would be nice enough to offer a second chance at Windmill Treasure TM? That's the thing. I don't know.
I don't know what kind of DM he is.
Joe, I've said this before. I'll say it again. Harlan has known himself for a very long time. I have known Harlan for like 5 months. Like I genuinely don't know. I don't have a lot of experience other than as much as I've been active voting, and it's hard because I can hear Harlan's voice in my head on both sides of every single poll we've had. I can genuinely hear arguments he would make in his voice. Like his actual human voice, not one of the many malevolent voices that he does. And it's really hard because I could totally see, I can make arguments for any vote. I really can. And I think that's part of why voting appeals to me so much, because it's very hard for me to make a decision.
And last point, Glittering makes a good point, which is a nice little segue into, not a segue, I don't actually, never mind. Glittering says, is the windmill treasure Alexander? Now, somebody actually pointed this out. There's a theory going around that Alexander the Owl has ties to Lilith, which, for those of you who forgot, Lilith is the woman all the way back in season 4 who we kind of sort of released. I shouldn't say we, that Arthur kind of sort of released by like throwing Scratch back into that little portal thing. So it could be a potential of us jump starting contacting Lilith, but we don't even know that. Once again, it's building on a lot of assumptions that we don't even have. Look, personally, like the grounds for it is just a little shaky for me to like base a poll vote on it, you know?
I think my issue is that I don't know any of the Call of Cthulhu games, which is where a lot of this lore and these theories come from, on top of like general mythos and a lot of third-party stuff. If you were to just listen to Malevolent as it is released to the public, nothing else, you have no other idea about what Harlan's been part of or anything that he's created or anything like that, that is kind of the version of Malevolent that I prioritize, because I don't think, as cool as I think it is that these games and stuff all influence and you can have a lot of background and understanding, a deeper understanding of the lore and things like that, I do personally, I only have so much space in this little tiny brain of mine, and I cannot hold all of the extras. Yeah, Joe just said it's absolutely intended to stand alone as a show, and that is kind of how I ingest Malevolent, and so I tend to stay away from things that have references to third-party sources, not because I have any beef with that. I think it's amazing. It's just that I can't grasp that and absorb it into my already difficult to keep in my brain Malevolent knowledge. So for me as a person who doesn't know anything about Lilith, really the only time I've heard her kind of mentioned is in Intermezzo, and when Harlan dropped her by name in the interview with Ren. So for me, it's very much like, I don't know what that means. We'll come back to it later, I guess. I'm gonna stick a pin in that. So, for me, the owl, oh my God, the owl, I need everyone to let go of the owl for like 5 seconds. Just like
Absolutely
5 seconds. 5 seconds.
Mm-mm.
Look, you can pick it back up again, but the owl should not be the determiner for a vote. It's the most inconsequential thing. Like, I bet. Okay. Anyway, I think.
Well, I will say the owl did hoot quite a lot when we were
Oh
walking
my God, I will
downstairs.
not be entertaining this owl hoot analysis no, absolutely not. Anyway, I know
No, the
that,
waylay.
yeah, Joe asked me asked about what we think of the waylay. Thoughts on the waylay? How do you feel about it,
I
Peppers?
not so I haven't delved too much into it. I'm very much one of those people. I do like to yap, but when it comes to theorizing, I like usually coming into things blind.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it makes it so much more exciting. And let's say, for example, I really fall in love with a theory and then it doesn't go through. Like, oh my goodness, I remember this one theory that I actually gelled with a little too much, where this was before I was in the patron server, I believe. But when Noel was suggested to be Parker,
Oh my God, he's
and it
dead.
turned out he wasn't, and I was like, so I learned my lesson, no more theorizing. When it comes to the waylay, I think, I mean, quite literally, waylay means waylaid, means pushed to the side, kind of set temporary. Almost like a purgatory is kind of how I view it. I do think there's some eldritch, maybe additional forces, whether either be by Lilith's hand or perhaps by suddenly a new kind of force that we haven't really been familiarized with. I do think it's kind of like a purgatory. I do think there's an outer force that caused it. I don't think Cain is a part of it. And that makes me really curious as to why Arthur specifically was put in it. And when the waiter says, you need to talk to management, who is management? So I would like to find out who this random management is. Is this management a god? I've heard people say Asgoth, or however you pronounce that guy's name. Not sure who that guy is, but I think he's God, but bigger and scarier, and he like sneezes and 3 galaxies explode like that. I know nothing about this guy.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I only know about that guy because I talk to Fish a lot, and Fish is sleepy idiot expert, which is what he calls. I'm gonna attempt to pronounce this as a Azathos. We're gonna hope. Anyway, as far as my thoughts on the waylay, I'm intrigued. Like I said at the beginning, like my interest is piqued. I would like to go back there very much. I mean, it's unfortunate that Arthur is going to be a casualty in my attempt to get back there, but I'm not in a hurry, but I very much would like to know more. I am also Scotty, as Scotty mentioned in the chat while Peppers was talking. Who is management? I would like to speak to management. I'm not usually that kind of person, but this time I would like to speak to management. I would love to know why that atmosphere, why that setting, why Vic. I mean, I got a little backstory about Vic from Abriel when we were talking about the chapter after it dropped. So
Apparently, he's some musician who was like a big whiny baby when one of the one of the characters turned him down. He's like,
yeah, everyone
"I need
hates.
to have." I don't know
Yes.
if I could say that. You need to kiss me.
He apparently has a history, let's just say. People are yelling that he's an asshole. Graham says he was also a grinner. Grinners are apparently some kind of absolutely terrifying version, like kind of a, I guess, I don't know if it's a possession or a demon or a what. I mean, like, I know what happens to you, but I don't know what it actually is. But basically, it's like your inhibitions are gone. So you just become usually super violent, as far as I know. I don't know. I will, anyone who wants to type up a definition for what a grinner is, I will read it out loud as fast as you can type it. Anyway, so.
But Well, how do you feel about the waylay
How,
other than, all those questions?
I really like it as a concept. I've always been interested in middle spaces and liminal spaces, which is not this, but I love liminal spaces. I think they're creepy and cool in the best way, and like to the point where all of my friends associate me with them and send me weird liminal spaces all the time. But I also am very interested in knowing, like, the approach that this waiter had was so calm. It's very obvious that this kind of thing has happened before, and so I'm assuming this is a very common reaction. And the waiter also did not seem to be confused or disturbed in any way that Arthur was fading out in some manner, because he kind of knew before Arthur did that he was going to go back.
And that's another point of
when you come back.
your drink will be here when you come back. So rejoice, Wumpers, in the chat. We will receive more content to create horrible fan fiction out of. So excited.
Yes, I'm very excited to see what fans do with the knowledge that Arthur is coming back. And I understand that Vic is a bad guy. I get it. Everyone in chat screamed and screamed and screamed, and I understand that. However, if you give a man a voice like that, I'm not going to be able to not like him. So unfortunately, yet again, Malevolence got me. Harlan has the best singing voice. I love it. And Harlan, I don't know if you listen to these, but if you do, if you drop an actual album where you sing songs, I will buy it. I genuinely love listening to you sing. All right. Graham has typed up a wonderful little description of what grinners are. So Graham says, grinners are a type of enemy NPC from Call of Cthulhu Game 2 with wide smiles cut on their faces. They are the result of a sanity lapse after blood has been spilled on the obelisk and act on their most darkest violent urges to feed the obelisk with more blood. The obelisk is made out of the same material as the Blackstone and is where Azathoth is abstractly trapped. Grinners are also connected to... Oh, okay. You must not like me, Graham. Grinners are also connected to Nyarlathotep in some way.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, and their will can be overridden by his. They'll do whatever he wants, like drones. Very interesting.
And then people in chat also mentioned that Harlan did, in fact, release an album.
Harlan has a country album? Are you okay, well, that's it. This is all that's going to be about. I'm just going to stream that for the next 30 minutes. And
I do think it's also very vital. This is one step closer
to Cowboy Arthur. Oh my God. This is it.
Just right there.
God. Okay, thank you, Joe, for linking me to Cowboy Harlan. I'm gonna need that on loop. I love it. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to. We have stuff to talk about, but I would love to hear from you guys as we start to wind down the show a little bit. We're testing out time lengths. Last time an hour was a little bit too short, but I also don't want to go too long because no one's gonna listen to a week of 2 hours a week.
You are talking to the wrong person.
I don't think people are going to listen to 2 hours a week of me yapping is the thing. You, yes.
Oh, that's incorrect. No, I will find you. I'm in your walls. I will find you.
Okay, but to ask you guys, how do you feel about Arthur's armor? This was a question that Peppers really wanted to ask. Do you want to elaborate on what you mean by that? What you want to hear from them about?
Oh, so Queen came out to me and was like, hey, I don't know what other questions I should ask. And I was like, well, obviously we have to ask about the armor. A couple things. Do y'all have designs? Are y'all already thinking about it? Have y'all started drafts? I've already started my draft. I've already kind of figured out a general design of the armor. Have you done research? Do you not want to do research and taken more of a fantasy stance? How are we feeling about this armor? Because I'm a little crazy over it.
Okay. And as a voter, do you think voting for or against what Arthur is inclined more toward impacts the narrative? Sort of the concept that we were getting at earlier when we were talking about Anusha's observation that the more we vote against what Arthur says in the dialogue of the show that he wants, the more reckless he tends to get because it's not what he wants. And granted, you know, there is always a way that you could, it's always in character. Arthur is capable of wanting every choice that we're given. But how do you think voting against what he says he wants up front in the episode, do you think that has an impact on the narrative? And if so, like, what do you think about doing that? Do you think we should do it more? Do you think we do it too much? Do you think a little bit is good sometimes? What is the vibe?
Yeah, very much in the sense of also in season 4. I mean, I wasn't voting actively during that time, but we often ignored John.
Yeah.
I felt during that time, and we got majorly. I mean, John tried to kill a certain man that everyone fell in love with. So that kind of I'm not necessarily sure Arthur wants to kill anybody. But I do think in season 5 there is going to be discussions of agency. I understand that season 5 was kind of building up John's identity, but I do think this will also be about Arthur's loss of agency since they're now still stuck in that body, and John is gaining more and more power.
And
but
I think, I mean, you know, ultimately it's they're stuck in the same body. If you're giving agency to one, that means you're taking agency away from the other.
And do you mind? I just think that, you know, we'll slowly read down. I'm kind of glancing at some of the armor mentions, you know, because that's my little jam. I did see something that was, Sunny said that I hope, this is regarding the Arthur question, I hope it has real world implications and not just Arthur good, because Metal, like, bro needs to break ribs, but no more stabby. I also agree. I do imagine that now that he has armor, I would like for it to, you know, for us to feel the impact of, and for him to feel the impact, surely, because he has no fucking Gambison on. Anyway, that at the very least, his skin will remain intact. Yes, there might be bruises, but brother is not going to be fatally stabbed anymore. I think that would be very delicious. And then very last note on that, because he's wearing the prince's garbs and the prince's armor, are people going to recognize that? And will they see him as a prince? Prince Arthur, and then maybe even King Arthur. And then I also saw Icarus made a fantastic Arthur design already, working with leather armor. Really love it, and I love the color palette.
That is very cool. No. I love it. I think I am in agreement. I hope that the armor does make an impact, but not so much of one that we feel invincible, because we are certainly not. I think the other thing is that Harlan needs to take you on as an armor consult, because if I were writing armor and I knew that you were listening to my podcast, I'd be like, well, I have to get this right, or Peppers is going to yell at me.
Or I'm going to tear you apart.
Cass says, I'm frothing at the mouth to get them in front of a blacksmith to add Arthur/John's own crest that they create stamped onto the armor. Oh, that would be super stellar.
I totally missed that. I love that idea.
Gabriel says it 1,000,000% affects things. Like in season 3, if the voters had voted against killing Larson, Arthur would have turned on John in some way, which, good point. Nikki says, I think a long streak of votes going against Arthur or John can impact their attitude, and balancing it overall would be most ideal for their respective mentality. That said, I don't usually consider that too heavily when deciding any given week's vote. Graham says, I think voting for or against what Arthur wants definitely has an effect, but I don't think it's the same effect every time. I think it changes depending on the situation. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. Yeah, and I think with Malevolent overall, it's probably best to assume there probably aren't any hard and fast rules. It's what works, and I think that is how stories are best served, especially one that like Malevolent, where it has to be really flexible. It gets written week to week. It is not something that is planned out, you know, months or years in advance like a TV show. You have to be able to pivot on a dime, and that means that all of these hard and fast rules, you can only have so many. And I agree that it's not something I take into consideration as a voter very often, like how the character's going to feel about the choice, because I know that's not up to me anyway. But when I do consider it, it's an interesting spin to put on your vote. Yami says, I feel Arthur won't mind if we vote against, so he doesn't have to risk climbing. Yeah, that's the other thing. Sometimes you are thinking of things the character is not thinking of, and it would benefit them to think about it. And you know they're missing something, and this is kind of how you tell them you're missing something.
And then I'll also push just a little bit regarding there didn't necessarily seem like he was super against the idea of traveling the tunnels. I think it was more he just wants to get out. And so if this tunnel expedition is yet another day of not getting out, I think then that will result in maybe some frustration on his end.
Yeah, I think he's tired. Man just died and came back. He doesn't.
Well, if he would fucking sleep, maybe he could. Yeah.
Well, now he's slept a lot, so he's fine.
Yeah, he slept for 3 days. He's such an idiot. I love him to death. But my guy, it's been 3 days. There has been like a single centimeter of like maybe some skin healing back. Brother, you need like 3 weeks down there.
Anuja says, yes, but Yorick's first exit choice way back was the windmill, too. That was the iconic talisman vote, where, you know, Yorick did say, like, yeah, I can take you back to the windmill, or I could get you killed.
And, you know, I only just remembered this. They have the talisman now.
Yeah.
And so if Arthur were to die yet again, they have
what
the
if
talisman.
We don't know. It's not a one-use item.
Yeah, who knows?
What if it is a consumable and we don't know it?
Mm-hmm. Single use.
Single use, yeah. Maybe it's just a neat rock now, says V.
Joe says unlimited Arthur glitch. I feel like Kane would love that so much.
Unlimited. Joe is Kane at this point. Unlimited Arthur glitch? Absolutely. Yeah. I would exploit that. Absolutely.
I love how we like explain it in gaming terms. I forgot that I wanted to do this, but in some way I wanted to somehow wedge Dark Souls into my idea of how I want season 5 to go down. So if I can just sprinkle in a little bit of like Dark Souls and how the talisman is like, I don't know, maybe the Firelink Shrine. Like, we're getting somewhere, right? Like, we can bring in the vibes, surely.
The vibes. That's what matters in the end. The vibes.
Exactly.
People have also pointed out, I think it was Lambda, one of the other hosts that will be on next week, I believe. Arthur coming back through the windmill and kind of exiting that opening that they came in through. Having John go through that, now that he has been kind of changed and had this big character moment, could be kind of a birthed thing, but came back, you know, different, changed, quote unquote. I think we all kind of understand that there were a lot of allegories that I know we will be touching on next week when Lambda comes in, because I know that Lambda is very passionate about speaking on that, and I want to give him the space to do that. On his own words. And I think that's really cool to imagine that they could come back through the opening of like a womb or whatever.
When we joked about how we were like entering a certain cavity walking in there, and then it was revealed that we're in her womb, and I was like, I want to get
I have
out of
to
here.
say, I unfortunately did find a cartoon
the mod's stressing out.
I found a diagram of a womb, and unfortunately, the amount of directions that we can go in totally lines up with like the layout of a womb. So anyway, we're just not gonna touch on the womb thing too hard. I know that it genuinely can squick some people out. Like, please, going forward, if you are in the Discord or if you're chatting right now or in the future, just know that's kind of a sensitive thing, and it's good in the podcast. Let's keep it in the podcast. I don't even love saying it out loud because it's just a little bit for me. And I like, as a concept, it's great. I think it's very creepy and cool, but it can be a little bit sensitive for people. So moving on. So yes, as far as windmill versus hallways, I somehow came out of this discussion not even sure where I stand anymore.
That was my
That's what always happens
intention.
to me.
I
Yeah.
wanted to confuse you.
Yeah.
At the
So,
moment, I'm still through the tunnels. I understand there might be fun loot and the windmill, or maybe we'll like gain another friend with Alexander if he's still there. But at the moment, I'm leaning tunnels.
yeah, I mean, what I want is to see them go through the tunnels. That's what Queen would like to see. But is that the choice that is the right? I want to get a good grade in Malevolent. I want to pick the right choice. So if Harlan could just come and tell me in my DMs or something, I won't tell anybody, I promise. If he just wants to come and tell me what the right choice is, that would be cool.
And we have talked about, I think, in the past. I'm very much a person where I do not analyze my whole decision until perhaps even a full episode or two afterwards. I feel that there might be immediate consequences to certain things, but perhaps later benefits might kind of bring themselves forward in the future. And that's something I had to learn, absolutely, because at first I was like, oh my gosh, I have to protect my baby boy Arthur. I'm forgetting that, this might lead to an amazing growth in John, which was, snagging that talisman. I was like, I don't want to do that. But then Thais, with their desperation to become violent and just grab everything, I was like, okay, yeah, let's do the talisman. And then Arthur got stabbed. But then,
I mean, everyone has their moments on all sides of the spectrum. Some weeks you get to come in and be really excited because you were right, and other weeks you voted talisman, and everyone hates you. No, I'm kidding.
oh,
I think there is a lot of people place the blame on single votes a lot for things that happen in the podcast, and that's just not how anything works. I don't think that any one vote, tipped the scales of everything. I think there are votes that contribute massively to the tone and theme and, definitely still impact what happens next. But I don't think anyone is quote unquote at fault. It's no one's fault that Arthur died. If you want to blame anyone, you blame the hag, because that's
and
really,
I did.
yeah. And I
I
think we
did.
all did. V makes a very good point. Vol Control in the chat. Right, there is often no right or wrong choice, just what direction to take the narrative. And look, I understand that. And I agree. And I say that all the time to people. There's no right or wrong choice. However, for me, there is a right or wrong choice. And it's the choice that everyone likes me more for. No, I'm kidding.
No, I get that, though.
It's the
Like,
choice.
every time that Booth John scolds me, I'm like,
It's the choice that, I mean, I do definitely, like I said, in the last episode, I am still working on trying to be better about being confident in my decisions and my judgments, and that is something that voting is really helping me cement. So this is a really good learning experience for me, and I want to get better at being confident in my choices and not caving so much. On the other hand, I do really value my own ability to debate and to see both sides of things and to talk through answers. But I appreciate guidance. So, if you're out there, Harlan, Joe, if you want to guide me through voting, I'll happily take it. I love guidance and questions. No, actually, one of my favorite things that I don't think you were active in the Discord for Peppers was the conversation that Harlan had with us about Larson's motivations during the finale of season 4, which I know people talk about a lot. It was done in a special channel.
I technically was a patron, and then I ignored it.
Yeah.
I didn't even vote.
Yeah, Abriel posted some art. There are little things in the Discord server called Malevolings. Very cute fan concept of, kind of your persona as it would be in Malevolent. And everyone has little creatures, little friends. And Abriel's is wearing a shirt that says, I got a good grade in Booth John. Good grades in Booth John are so rare. Joe says, I'd be so interested to hear a future episode all about voting, the nitty gritty, as it were. I would love to do that. I think we have got to make a side episode about that. Yeah. Because I could talk for a long time about the nitty gritty of voting.
And I, if I remember correctly, Yummy mentioned how they could go on forever about a certain voting choice in like 90 or something, with
There are
like
so
three
many
votes or something.
votes and episodes. I think we have low key plans. I don't know quite how it's going to work. We have plans to have a YouTube channel where we can post kind of offshoots and episodes that can be listened to out of order and that don't flow with the major themes of what we're trying to do on the podcast, just so that we can upload as much as we want, as long as we want, as often as we want. We can have like different things to talk about that are kind of evergreen, like those old votes, old experiences, the history of things. But we are going to also put some of that content here in the main podcast so that everyone gets a taste. But a lot of that will probably be uploaded off site so that we can do a variety and we can, record independently if we want to. Like if Yami wants to do a whole thing just talking them alone, that's totally fine. And same with me, all of that. So yeah, I'm excited to keep going. I think we can. Arbina, do you have anything left you want to talk about, Peppers, last few minutes, or do you want to just call it here?
I'm, you know how I could yap for hours about the armor, and we can talk about the color scheme and how we can mesh maybe the 1930s, maybe fashion style armor, and how much fun that could be. We can talk about silhouettes. We can talk about, I don't know, the material of the armor and how expensive it was for steel, which is why it wasn't carved like butter that you see in most movies, which drives me insane. We could talk about mail. We could talk about Gambesons again if we want to.
Okay,
My
mistake.
We're good.
My mistake. I forgot both of us could talk for actually ever. I am so glad that we have more and more people every time. We're again gonna try and be consistent about every Friday night, unless there is a conflicting spooky stream, because I want to go to those. Sorry, everybody. Those are more important to me than any podcast I'm recording. They're so much fun. They're having a tentative spooky stream tomorrow. I think so. And I hope to see a lot of you there. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's okay, I guess.
If you guys have anything that you want us to talk about specifically next week, or if you want to share I'm going to try and edit and post the recording tonight, actually, in the next couple hours.
Oh my gosh, you're crazy.
Well, because there's not a lot of editing to do. I'm not going to sit here and edit out all the million times I say and I'm really just going to cut out the awkward beginning where we're all saying, "Can you hear me?" And then I just send it. That's the beauty of it being so easy, just two people talking. But yes, everyone get some rest across the pond in the inferior time zones. I'm gonna get
Arthur's British, right?
He's not living in England.
For real, he has citizenship here, so he's one of us.
No, I love everybody. No, look at how nice and pink and cute my little icon is. I would never say anything mean or bad.
No, I'm a horrible, awful, mean person, but thank you guys. Especially people where it's like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. You guys are insane and crazy. Like it's so humbling. I just want to say, not like, first of all, Queen, you're a fucking queen.
No,
it is insane for you to host this whole thing. You put so much work into this, and to be quite frank, when this idea was brought up to me, I was like, that's a cute point. And then I went on my flight and didn't think about it. And then you jump-started the whole thing. It's just insane how incredibly on it you are. And I just think that you're okay, I guess.
That's so sweet. First, I think you're amazing too. And I'm very honored that you want to do this with me. I know that you have a busy schedule and that, we are all in this together as far as making time for fan works that are, unpaid. We do it because we love it and we love the community. And I'm very proud of everybody who participates. I'm also so grateful for everybody who comes into chat because, to be honest with you, it makes me really worry when I only see like 5 people in here. And then I'm like, great, for those 5 people, feel really bad because if you don't talk, it's just going to be a lot of me stuttering and mumbling about how cool Malevolent is. Well, thank you all for coming and participating and having fun with us. It makes me feel super happy when I see everyone enjoying something that I have planned and put time and work into, because that is why I plan things, because I like seeing people have fun. So thank you.
And of course, we will also have more voices here. It's not just going to be me, who's one of the hosts. Queen will be here, kind of being a queen and kind of leading the discussion, but we're going to have a rotation of hosts. Yes. Bring in some more people, chat. We want this to be community-led, not just like 4 people being like, I'm the master of this podcast.
I'm a Malevolent expert, actually.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. No. Next week, everyone is going to meet Lambda for the first time on the podcast, because he was not here for the pilot. So we will have him on, and he will be hanging with us, and we will be talking probably a lot about John and some special allegories. So if you are, I don't know, queer, maybe look forward to that. All right, guys.
Final thank you for Graham. Graham was the one to figure out Malevolent Autopsy. Such a cool name. Ugh. Would not have ever thought of it myself. Oh, thank you so much, Graham.
Graham and Roanoke, I believe, also.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I mixed the two up.
I was like, am I wrong? No, don't worry about it. You're fine. Yeah, it was not Graham. It was
love you. Platonically. What I meant to say is Roanoke. I said that the whole time. Sorry. Roanoke, if you're listening to this, I said your name. Queen, we're gonna need to after that you can maybe edit that out and we can
probably
flip that around.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Good night.